From the moment we first see Dougal MacKenzie, his presence demands attention. He is not the quiet man in the corner, nor the cautious one waiting for orders. He is the warrior who steps forward, chest high, eyes blazing, ready to face whatever enemy stands in his path. Dougal carries himself like a storm. And when he enters a room or a battlefield, you can feel the ground shift beneath his feet. He is the kind of man others follow, not because they are told to, but because his fire draws them in the Highlands. Where strength and courage often meant survival, Dougal shone brighter than most. He was a skilled fighter, fast with a blade and steady with a weapon, but his true power went beyond steel. It was his voice, his presence, and his raw determination that inspired men to march into danger without fear. He spoke to their hearts, and in return, they gave him their loyalty. To the clansmen of Mackenzie, Dougal was more than a leader. He was a force of nature. But Dougal's spirit was not only about courage. It was also about pride. He carried the weight of his clan's honor like armor across his shoulders. Every fight, every decision was tied to a deep, burning need to protect the Mackenzie name. It made him fearless, but it also made him reckless. His temper was sharp, and once ignited, it was nearly impossible to control. Friends could turn into rivals, and rivals into enemies. All because Dougal never backed down once his blood was heated. Yet for all his flaws, his bravery was undeniable. When battles came, Dougal was not the kind of leader to sit safely at the back. He was there on the front lines, sword in hand, charging forward with his men. He did not just demand courage from others. He proved it with every step, every strike, every scar he carried across his body. He believed in action more than words, and that belief carved his legacy into the heart of Outlander. Dougal MacKenzie's warrior spirit was one in a million, fierce, proud, relentless. He was the man who turned fear into fire, and whose shadow still looms over the Highlands. And this was only the beginning of his story. Asterix's power in the Highlands was never simple. It was a game of loyalty, bloodlines, and endless struggles for control. At the center of this storm stood Dougal MacKenzie, a man born to lead, yet trapped in the shadow of his older brother. Colum Dougal had the fire, the strength, and the charisma to rally men but Colum. With his sharp mind and quiet authority, held the official title of clan chief. This tension was more than family rivalry. It was a battle between two very different visions of leadership. Colum ruled with strategy. He was calm, calculating, and deliberate. But Dougal ruled with passion. His decisions came from the heart, from instinct, from the fire burning inside him. And while that fire gave him power, it also set him on a path of constant conflict. Time and time again, we see Dougal pushing against Colum's control. He wanted more than just to serve. He wanted to shape the destiny of the clan himself. His loyalty was deep. But his ambition was deeper still. This ambition showed itself in the way Dougal carried the clan's banner into war. He was not just a fighter. He was a symbol. To the men who followed him, he was the Mackenzie spirit given flesh. They saw him as a protector, as a hero, as the man who would fight until the very last breath for their freedom. But behind the fire of that devotion, there was always the shadow of personal desire. Dougal's hunger for power was no secret, and it sometimes made allies question whether he was fighting for the clan or for himself. And yet, that is what makes him so unforgettable. Dougal was not a perfect leader. He was bold, sometimes reckless, often blinded by his own pride. But he was real. His leadership carried the weight of human flaws, and that made him both dangerous and compelling. He was the leader who could make you cheer, make you believe, and even make you doubtful in the same breath. And while Colum ruled from the mind, Dougal ruled from the soul. The truth is simple. Dougal MacKenzie was not born to follow. He was born to lead. And even when leadership demanded sacrifice, when it tore his family apart. He still refused to bow to anyone, not even his brother. That defiance, that unbreakable will, carved his place as one of the most complex leaders in Outlander. Behind the roar of the battlefield. Behind the pride of the clan, there lived a man who burned just as fiercely for love as he did for war. Dougal MacKenzie was no stranger to desire. For him, passion was not a quiet thing. It was wild, overwhelming, and often reckless. His heart ruled him just as much as his sword. And in that truth, we see the side of Dougal that was most human. His affection for Geillis Duncan revealed this vulnerability. To Dougal, she was more than a woman. She was fire disguised in flesh, mysterious, fearless, and unafraid to walk the same dangerous path that he himself craved. With Geillis, Dougal was not only a warrior or a leader. He was a man daring to dream beyond duty. Their love was dangerous, scandalous, and forbidden, yet it was real. It pulled him into choices that tested his loyalty and blurred the lines between ambition and devotion. Geillis saw through him, and he let her, because in her presence, he did not have to be the unshakable Highlander. He could simply be a man who wanted. But Geillis was not the only source of conflict in his heart. Dougal's complicated ties to Claire Fraser revealed another layer. He was drawn to her strength, her fire, her difference. With Claire, Dougal saw both a challenge and a temptation, an impossible dream that was always out of reach. Though Claire never returned his feelings, his fascination with her added fuel to his rivalry with Jamie. Dougal's heart wanted what he could not have, and that made him restless, haunted, and more dangerous than ever. This was the paradox of Dougal MacKenzie. The same passion that made him inspiring as a leader also made him reckless in love. His desires left cracks in the armor he wore so proudly. They revealed the man underneath, the one who longed for more than power, more than victory, more than loyalty. He longed for connection, for love, for someone who could meet his fire with their own. And it is this his desires, his flaws, his restless heart that made him unforgettable. Because heroes are not only defined by their victories, they are defined by what they love, what they chase, and what they are willing to risk for it. Dougal MacKenzie risked everything, and for that he remains one in a million. Loyalty was the blood that ran through Dougal MacKenzie's veins. To the clan, to the Highlands, to the dream of a free Scotland, his devotion burned like a torch in the dark. He carried that fire everywhere he went, speaking of honor, of duty, of sacrifice. To many, Dougal was the embodiment of Highland loyalty, a man who would fight until his last breath for his people, for their survival, and for the land that gave them life. But loyalty is never simple. Beneath Dougal's devotion lived a hunger ambition that refused to stay silent. The same man who swore loyalty to his brother Colum sometimes pushed too far, reaching for power that was not his to claim. The same man who fought to defend his clan sometimes let pride cloud his judgment, turning allies into enemies. His loyalty was real, but it was often tangled with personal desire. And in that clash, betrayal was born. This tension lived at the heart of every choice he made. Dougal fought fiercely for the Jacobite cause, raising money, rallying men, carrying the banner of rebellion. To him, the uprising was not just politics, it was destiny. Yet, his methods, his secret dealings, his reckless choices, left scars that made others doubt him. Was he fighting for Scotland, or for the glory his name would earn when Scotland rose free? For Dougal, the answer was both and. That is what made him dangerous. Even those closest to him could not always trust his fire. To Claire, he was a man torn between honor and desire. To Jamie, he was both mentor and rival, a figure who could inspire and threaten in the same breath. Dougal's loyalty to his people was never in question, but his loyalty to individuals, to family, to love, to friendship was always fragile. always at risk of breaking under the weight of his ambition. And yet, that is why his story lingers. Because true loyalty is never simple. It is messy, it is painful, and it is often betrayed by the very heart that swears it. Dougal MacKenzie embodied this truth. Loyal and treacherous. Heroic and flawed. He was both the shield and the dagger, the protector and the threat. A man who gave everything to Scotland even as he lost pieces of himself along the way. Asterisk, every fire, no matter how bright, eventually consumes itself. For Dougal MacKenzie, the end came not on a battlefield surrounded by enemies, but in a dark room, face to face with the man he once called kin. It was not the English who struck him down, nor strangers who hated him met was family. And that is what made his end so tragic. Dougal's passion for the Jacobite cause, once his greatest strength, became his undoing. He could not bend, could not yield, could not accept that others saw the rebellion differently. Where Jamie hesitated, Dougal charged forward. Where caution called for patience, Dougal only roared louder. His fire, once inspiring, had become uncontrollable. And in that moment, loyalty and ambition collided in a way that could not be undone. The final confrontation with Jamie was not just about politics or war. It was about everything that had come before. Mentor against student. Uncle against nephew. Warrior against warrior. Dougal had lived his life by the sword, and now, in this brutal clash, he would die by it. The room echoed with struggle, with breath, with steel scraping against willpower. And when the final blow came, it was heavy with sorrow. Jamie did not want to kill him, but Dougal left no choice. His fire demanded an ending, and Jamie's blade delivered it. But here is the truth. Dougal MacKenzie did not die as a coward. He died as he lived, fierce, unyielding, and unafraid. Even in his last moments, there was no surrender in his eyes. There was only defiance, only the same unstoppable force that had carried him through every battle before. His body fell, but his spirit remained, etched into the story of Outlander as one of its most unforgettable losses. His death was not just the fall of a man. It was the fall of an era. With Dougal gone, the rebellion lost one of its fiercest voices. The Highlands lost one of its most unshakable defenders. And Jamie lost more than an uncle. He lost a piece of himself, a shadow that would haunt him long after the sword was withdrawn. Dougal MacKenzie's end was tragic because it was inevitable. A man who burned that brightly could never fade quietly into the background. He had to go out in fire. And he did. Asterisk, some men are remembered for their victories. Others are remembered for their failures. But Dougal MacKenzie? He is remembered for both. His life was a storm of courage and chaos, love and betrayal, ambition and sacrifice. He was never perfect. He never pretended to be. And that is why he remains so powerful in our memory, because he was real. Dougal was the kind of man who could make you cheer with pride one moment and question his choices the next. He was fire and iron, passion and danger, loyalty and defiance. To his clan, he was a protector. To his enemies, a threat. To those who loved him, a man both inspiring and impossible to hold. Every part of him was larger than life, and yet, every flaw made him deeply human. Even in death, Dougal MacKenzie refused to fade. His shadow stretches across the Highlands, across the Jacobite cause, across the hearts of those who knew him. He reminds us that greatness is not only about noble deeds or wise choices, it is also about fire. About standing tall even when the world tries to break you. About never letting go of who you are, no matter the cost. That was Dougal's truth. That was his burden, and that was his gift. So when we say Dougal MacKenzie was one in a million, it is not because he was flawless. It is because he was fearless. It is because he loved too deeply, fought too fiercely, and lived too loudly to ever be forgotten. He was a man who burned bright, even when the flames consumed him. A man whose story still shakes the soul of Outlander. Long after his final breath, Dougal's legacy is not just in the battles he fought or the rebellions he fueled. His legacy is in the way he makes us feel, the way he forces us to face the truth that heroes are never simple, and greatness is never clean. He was flawed. He was fierce. He was unforgettable. Dougal MacKenzie was, and will always be, one in a million. Asterisk, the Highlands remember their warriors, but some names carry further than the rest. Dougal MacKenzie is one of those names. He was not carved from calm stone like other leaders. He was forged in fire-burning, raging, refusing to be silent. His story does not live in dusty history books. It lives in voices, in memories, in the echoes of every scene where he stood unshaken, unbroken. Even now, when we look back on Outlander, Dougal is not just a character. He is an energy. He is the clash of sword and shield, the whisper of forbidden love, the unyielding cry of rebellion. He is the proof that flawed men can still be unforgettable. And that passion, even when dangerous, has the power to move mountains. His choices were not always right, his path not always noble, but they were always his own. And that is why we remember him. The truth is simple. Without Dougal MacKenzie, the story of Outlander would not be the same. He was the fire that lit the rebellion, the voice that shook the walls of the clan, the spirit that stood unbent even against fate itself. And when that fire finally burned out, it left behind not silence, but a legend. So when we say, Dougal MacKenzie is one in a million, it is not just praise. It is remembrance. It is the echo of a man who lived with too much force to ever be forgotten. It is the truth of a Highlander whose story still runs like thunder through the hearts of those who hear it. Dougal MacKenzie was a warrior, a leader, a lover, a rebel, a storm. And storms, no matter how fleeting, always leave their mark.